Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile 2 discussion. Granny Games today put out major changes that are coming to the Fate of the Vaal League content over the next day or so. Now, they're planning to put this out tomorrow, which in New Zealand time zone means Friday New Zealand time, hopefully by the end of business New Zealand time, but we'll see exactly when it comes live. The key thing is that unless there's an absolute catastrophe with this patch, it's going to be live for the second weekend. This is a suite of pretty substantial buffs to the endgame temple juicing, particularly raising both the amount of loot and also the amount of monsters that will be encountered in the temple. One of the things that's difficult when a league mechanic comes out that's quite complicated, like this one, or potentially like patch 3.23 or 3.24 in Path of Exile 1, both of which ended up having extremely high loot once they were worked out. Early on, they can feel pretty bad. They can feel like they're not generating much loot at all. And the reason for that is just simply that players are engaging with them wrongly. For example, in patch 3.23 in Path of Exile 1, before the map of the Affliction Wildwood was actually worked out, people were not getting very many of the wisps, and the combinations that could come up when you got multiple types of these wisps simultaneously, these were just not coming up very often at all. Early on, people were saying that both the mechanic was too hard and not rewarding enough. Then, the difficulty of it did get nerfed, but the rewards were not changed. However, the rewards became massively higher once the player base worked out how to engage with this quite complicated mechanic. 3.24 was quite similar in Path of Exile 1 as well, and it was possible 0.4.0 was that in Path of Exile 2. However, it turned out that no, it was just a case that the rewards were just undertuned. Here, we're going to go through what Granny Games are doing to change that. So firstly, they're going to be roughly doubling the values on existing modifiers that are applied to the temple at all room tiers. Now, I believe these modifiers include things like 30% more rarity of items from chests, which doesn't seem like much until you realize that you can get a bunch of these, and as a result, doubling them could be quite impactful. We'll have to see how it plays out, but I could see a scenario where a temple that is just full of rooms, and where you seldom do the Architect and seldom do Atzari, could end up being something that's more lucrative than it is at the moment. The Spymaster, Golemworks, and Thaumaturge rooms, they now apply bonuses to other specific room types within the temple. The Corruption Chamber at Tier 3 now adds a Corrupted Abomination to the temple. So this is going to be an additional boss that you'll end up fighting, and where it is, we don't know. We'll find that one out. Chances are that this will be something that will be interesting to try and encounter, and probably one to watch out for if you like to play in hardcore. The Spymaster room at Tier 3 now adds an Unchained Beast to the temple. Again, another one of these extra bosses. It's worth remembering that in Path of Exile 2, most of the loot comes from boss and boss-adjacent monsters. So adding unique monsters and rare monsters is considerably better for loot than it would be if you play Path of Exile 1 and consider what adding one additional rare monster or one additional unique monster tends to do there. The Golemworks at Tier 3 now adds a Royal Sentinel to the temple. You can get a Royal Colossus out of a Generator Tier 3. Sack Chamber adds a High Priest. A Quadrilla Sergeant, which could be very dangerous, comes from the Thaumaturge room at Tier 3. The Alchemy Lab at Tier 3 now increases gold found, and the exact numbers will depend whether that's useful or not. I think in Path of Exile 2, though, gold is not something you tend to run out of in normal gameplay. You really have to be a sit on the currency exchange and flip items player in order to really have issues with gold. And the Treasure Vault room will now add 25% rarity of items dropped to the temple. Next up, they mention the Exalted, Varling, and Alchemy benches. Now, I'm aware there's a Regal bench as well, and I don't think I've actually seen an Alchemy bench. So I'm not sure what the intended thing here is. It might actually be Exalt, Regal, and Varling benches. Previously, these were not allowing you to take their craft as currency, and Granny Games are changing this so that once you have completed Act 3, you're not going to be able to do this until Doriani accompanies you to the temple, but once you have completed Act 3, you will then be able to take these benches with you as currency. I've got to say, though, that even by the time you're in the interludes, you probably have enough Exalts, so this isn't a big difference. Do remember, though, that very early in progression, so we're talking Acts 1 and 2 in particular, but 3 as well, the Incursion Temple is fantastic for going and powering up your early gear. After Act 3, these benches will now allow you to take their currency, which will have a minimal impact because it's only one Exalted Orb in an environment where you're probably getting 3 of them in every map or 1 of them in every campaign zone. We still want the temple to scale further in the endgame though, so we're adding another change. They're adding a medallion, which will add a random waystone modifier to your temple that will last for 10 temple runs, allowing you to make it more difficult and rewarding. Be careful though, these can get quite dangerous. And this is Editing Gog here, just wanting to point out that there is one thing that could go very wrong here. there really, 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 really needs to be a way to remove a specific modifier that is just completely bricking you. For example, maybe you're playing a build that's quite soft to chaos damage at the moment, and you hit something that gives monsters a whole bunch of extra chaos damage. This could potentially brick your next 10 temple runs, unless you're able to surgically remove that, or at the very least, the ability to remove all existing modifiers that are on the temple. So hopefully that gets thought about. I'm really a fan of having ways to opt into more danger, but you also need a way to bail yourself out if you've opted into too much. So this is a way that you can scale things beyond normal limits if you're feeling up to the challenge. We also wanted to make it a bit easier to get the specific rooms you need in order to get a specific combo. This has been my main gripe with it. You often just can't get pairs of rooms reliably at all. So they're adding a medallion that allows you to reroll rooms waiting to be placed. Another concern that players had was that defeating the Architect was resulting in too much progress loss, and the rewards were not commensurate with the amount of progress that was lost. So they're making a whole suite of changes here. Firstly, halving the number of rooms removed when you defeat the Architect. Secondly, allowing reward rooms placed from the Architect's console to connect to any other adjacent room, not just paths, making them easier to claim. Next, allowing the Architect to connect to any adjacent room. Next, the Tablet Research Vault crafting room outcomes can now no longer destroy tablets. Next, the Uniques Vault room now excludes more common uniques as the level of the temple increases. Definitely keep an eye on this one. There's a rare room, but depending how far they take this could end up being really, really good. The Extraction Chamber is now considerably rarer, and you cannot get offered more than one of these at the console table. We've also heard feedback that the rewards from in-world encounters, so this is your in-map events, were not high enough in the endgame. This was really noticeable. The monsters that you would kill guarding the incursion event in maps, these were fantastic in the campaign. There's a whole lot of things that you can get from them that really do add up. You get a whole heap of lesser Jeweler's Orbs, number of Exalted Orbs, occasional Chaos Orbs, just a lot of really useful stuff while you're leveling. But then at endgame, you're not really getting very much at all from them, and this is being changed. So after completing a non-boss Fate of the Vaal encounter, a chest will now rise out of the center and drop some items. In the campaign, this will be a magic chest. In endgame, it'll be magic or rare. So this can be all over the place, but at least it's something. It means you'll get a few more items there. These changes, along with some others, will be deployed with patch 040C, which is coming tomorrow, i.e. Friday New Zealand time. There are further improvements we want to make to Fate of the Vaal, but they'll need to wait until a future patch. Thank you for all the feedback. Ultimately, I think that this is probably the exact right time for it, because it is important to check and make sure that there is a genuine problem, that it's not a case that there's lots of loot there but players haven't found it yet. But players have tried a lot of things over the last few days, and most people were just getting to the point where they were saying, you know what, I'm not bothering with the temple, or if I am bothering with the temple, I'm Atsuri rushing. That's all changing, and so now there's new ways to engage with the incursion content, and they're coming in time for the second weekend. That's the end of all the discussion of the improvements to the Fate of the Vaal League. I did have one very quick announcement I was going to make though, and that is that I am working on a crafting video. In fact, I interrupted my editing of that video in order to record this one, and it's going to be on crafting low to medium budget crossbows for a grenade build. So I'm aiming to have that out in the next 12 to 16 hours, depending on exact timing, and you all know the deal with YouTube. If you want to get notified when that comes up, then you can press the subscribe button. If you don't want to, that's cool too. Leaving it there, may your Vaal Orbs have interesting results.